My name is Mutabazi, and I'm originally from Uganda, but I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I thought I can play this video so you can kind of, as I get to share, you have kind of a visual picture of where I come from, so you can understand. So let's play this video if we can. I grew up in a small village in Uganda, and my family was very poor. At 10 years old, I ran away and became a street kid. People treated me just like garbage. After living on the streets for 4 years, a man I was trying to steal from asked me what my name was, and that shocked me. Why? Because for 5 years, no one human being had ever asked me what my name was. Not only did he send me to school, but he invited me to live with his family. And for the first time, I saw what family looked like. I chose to be an advocate for children who are in the most vulnerable state, just like I was when I was little. When I moved to the United States, I was shocked to learn there were kids that have no place to sleep, nothing to eat, or a place to belong. So I decided to drop everything and be a foster dad. Over the years, I've taken care of more than 45 children, and I'm blessed that I've adopted so far 3 of them. Yes, my family looks different. Families can come in all different shapes and sizes, and I love mine. Wow, there is my family. But truly a joy to be with you here. And today I want to share my journey. You probably watch that and say, how do you make it? How did you get here? And that story that I'm about to share with you. But also how the kindness of a stranger changed my life. In some way, for me, strangers aren't strangers. I feel like they're angels that God sent along the way to truly give me an opportunity to feel seen and heard. And Charlie is one of them. You know, I get to meet thousands of pastors every day or every week, but there are some that are special that stick with you, and he's one of them, and I'm truly blessed that he got to invite me to share my journey. So as I get to share my journey, first of all, I speak 7 languages, so English is my 4th language. So today, if I'm rude, you might throw your iPhone at me, and I have 2 teenagers, and they will use those iPhones, I promise. And for those online, I'm sorry, you'll have to stick with me because you can't throw anything at me. But truly a joy. But also too, I'm going to share a few things. I want you to feel like I'm not guilting you. I'm just my experience, on how the kindness of a stranger and coming to the United States, of what I thought, and what I learned, and along the way, how it changed my life. Hopefully, it gets to change yours as well. So when I came to the United States, for me, I flew from Uganda to Los Angeles. And the family that had invited me, that took me for dinner, they took me to dinner, and I ate everything on the plate. I had never seen that much food in my life, And as I was cleaning with my fingers, they're like, do you want more? I was like, you mean I can ask for more? They said, absolutely. And so I asked for more food, and they gave me. But as I was eating, I noticed that there were waiters carrying food passing by, So I said, where is that food going? And the lady said, well, it's going to the trash. And in those moments, somehow I felt like, wait a minute. All that food is going to be thrown away? Like, what do you mean? And really for me, for the very, very first time, I think my faith was shaken in some way. Here's why. I began to ask God, I love you, and I worship you, and I've known you, and you rescued me. But there's so much food that can be thrown away. I'm beginning to question myself, that do you love us the same? And here's why. I did not have a name until when I was 2 years old. Why? Because for every 100 children were born in my village, 60 would die before the age of 2. So most moms didn't name their kids until they were sure that they made it at 2. But the problem was, most time, it was lack of food. So if the kids are malnutrition, if they have malaria, they will lose their lives within 24 hours. So for me to watch that food and thinking about, I have lost members of my family for lack of beans. So to see food thrown away, I couldn't understand that God can love us the same way, that others can have so much thrown away, but others can die literally for lack of beans and potatoes. So for me, in those moments, that's when I began to say, I think we can read the Bible, but I think Americans have a different Bible than I do have. So for me, I didn't want to go back to church anymore. And here's why. Because I could not understand the excess. You know? So for me, don't worry, I'm going to read it so you don't have to put it on the screen. It'll be easier that way. But for me, before I could run away, somehow I ended up in my dormitory and I said, I don't want to go to church. But somehow I ended up in Psalm 139, you know? And as I was reading it, I really knew, we know David he was the richest man. He had everything you could think of. This guy, I hear he had more than 100 wives. I'm like, how do you have 2 wives, I'm a single dad. That he had all you could think of. But in Psalm 139, he does not mention one thing that he has, but rather of who God made him. He says, Lord, you have seen me, what is in my heart. You know all about me. You know when I sit and when I get up. You know what I am thinking, even though you're far away. You know when I sit down, look, we're all sitting down. But so as every child, every family in Uganda can sit down and walk. And that really helped me to know, wait a minute, he's seeing the attributes of who God made him. And that's what he's stuck at. When I go out to work and when I come back, you know exactly I live. Lord, even before a word is on my tongue, you know it all. You are all around me. You are behind me and in front of me. You hold me in your power. That helped me to say, wait a minute. He's not talking about the food or the stuff he has. He says in the little things, I'm amazed at how well you know me. It's more than I can understand. And for me, I'm posing a question for you today. As I read verse 14, it says, how you made me is amazing. And wonderful, I praise you for that. What you have done is wonderful. I know that fully well. And this posed for me, those moments I was asking God, wow, this man, he loves the Lord because he says, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And for us here, what I'm asking you, do you know that fully well, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, even when your job is questionable, when your marriage is questionable? Do you know that fully well? To David, it was, I can stretch, I can walk, and that is my first place to know that you love me so much that even before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. And that really changed me to know that God loves me not best on the food, but best that he created you and I and wonderfully made. But also I got convicted, again, today's Memorial Day, to know what the people that fought for us, and for what they have done. And for me, Luke 12:48 really convicted me. It says, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. As I get to share with you, you're going to see, I am the wealthiest man on the planet. And I'm not kidding. I am more wealthy than most people. And this is what I did for me. Knowing that I live in the United States, that I can have 4 meals, sometimes 5 if I want to. The conviction was, now that I have all that, to whom much is given, much is required. So as a single man, I didn't know what to do. I had traveled, I've been in more than 100 countries, and I had never seen a person who was adopting or who was doing anything to do with adoption. They're always 2 married people and Caucasian. So I thought, you have to be married and Caucasian. So I said, that's not for me, I guess. But while in Ethiopia, I said, can I adopt? They're like, no, you have to be an American or European. For men, no. Absolutely no. Due to sex trafficking. So most time men are not allowed to adopt. So I knew there's no way I can do anything. But for me, I went to the foster system and I said, hey, I would like to mentor teenagers. Who can give me teenagers to spend with 2 hours? So that's why I went. So the social worker who received me said, have you ever thought of being a foster dad? I said, yes, I think about that every day, but I'm not qualified. And she said, why? I said, I'm single. I didn't say the other part. I just said, I'm single. And she said, well, that's not a reason. 30% of our foster parents are single, so you can be a foster parent. That was on Monday. On Thursday, I signed up to be a foster dad. To me, it was to live Luke 12:48. I also lived in Los Angeles, so I would go visit families who have 10,000 square footage home, And I'll be like, so what are the other bedrooms for? Like, oh, nobody. 2 of you live in this massive house? And for me, that really began to really question in some way in my heart that there are kids in our neighborhood that have nowhere to live. And you have extra bedroom? And I think for me, Luke 12:48 really convicted me to say, if one day I have an extra bedroom, I want to use that to truly be a vest for kids who have no place to be, for a home. So that's why I became a foster parent, just so I can be accountable for living in the United States and as an American now. So since then, I've had 47 children, and I would like to show you the faces of my little ones that, you probably saw the other end. So this is the picture of my family. I know, that's like the typical family day, hour by hour. There's my daughter in the back. I know she's pinching the other one who's screaming behind her. And my teenager is saying, I am done. Why am I here? And my little one, who's 9-month-old, she just has no clue what's happening. So that's a little picture of what my day works hour by hour. Next. This is Anthony. He's my first son I adopted. He came into the foster care at 1.5. He was adopted by a family at 4. The family that adopted him dropped him at the hospital when he was 11, never said goodbye, or never gave him the reason why they did not want him anymore. So when he came to me, he came as a respite. But as soon as he came to my home, I said, you can call me Mr. Peter, not Mutabazi. And he said, but can I call you my dad? And I said, no, you're leaving on Monday, absolutely no. But then he looked back and said, I'm 11. I was told I can choose who my father should be. You should be. And now he's my adopted son. He was 11, and now he is 19 years old. We have 2 dogs, Simba and Rafiki. As you notice, all my kids are Caucasian, so I needed something African, something I can yell at. Simba, Rafiki, come over here, Something African. That's why we have those names. Next. This is my little one. He's now 9. Every time I put him to bed, he always says, Dad, I love you for putting me to bed. But what he's saying is, no one ever put me to bed before. They have the way they communicate kids with trauma. Next. As a foster dad, I decided to take in only boys who can speak and dress themselves. I thought that was easy. So when I said yes to the previous picture you saw, the social workers usually don't tell you the truth. They always give you half truth. So they said, yeah, that boy, you can take him. And then she paused. She said, and there's a sister. And I was like, I've already said yes to the other. How do I say no now? So I said, oh, whatever. As soon as she came to my home, I can tell you, she is the boss of the house. I mean, I have no hair, but in her mind, she says, Dad, just sit down. I need to work on your hair. But I have no hair. Sit down. Do my nails. Sometimes when I'm looking at a pile of laundry on the other side, I'm like, okay, just don't look, just stay here. But she's taught me how to love my mom and how to love my sister and every female on the planet. She taught me to listen. She taught me how to be patient and how to be kind. Next. Also, I didn't know in foster care, there's so many things in foster care that I cannot tell you or else we'll be here for a week. That when you have siblings and another sibling comes, they still give you a phone call because you're next of kin, So this little one came when she was 9-month-old. She's now 3. So I have not slept in 1.5 years. I thought terrible 2 was like a myth, something that happens. It is true, and 3 is even worse, I can tell you. Next. As a foster parent, usually we get kids who just need a short time. So he came to me so he can age out at 18. So when he came in, 4 weeks later, he said, Dad, I want to talk to you, and it's really serious. When you have a teenager says, Dad, it's really serious, you always think, the police is on the way. Someone's pregnant. You think of the worst. And he said, I have been in 12 homes. They adopted my little siblings. But everyone said they would adopt me, but they never did. Would you consider being my dad? So he's now 21. He's my oldest son. That's it. So you might be listening and say, Peter, how do you do it? How do you have 47 kids and now you have 7 in your home? Like, how do you? Well, I don't sleep, so I have veins of coffee anytime that I need. But here's where I'm going to take you, how this really brought me to be a foster dad, on how my life was, and also to give you courage that don't give up on yourself. And the other part, don't let your past define who you were. And that's where I'm going to go with you. I was born in a place where life was miserable in every shape form you can imagine. Grew up in a home where no one told me to dream or to be hopeful. Here's the reason why. If your mom cannot feed you for a night, how does she tell you to dream? Grew up in a home where I had one meal every other day. We could not have beans and potatoes. Beans today, potatoes the next day. I grew up in a home where in 365 days, I had a different meal on Christmas. So I grew up knowing that Christmas was about chicken because it was the only time we had chicken. But men had to eat, women and children last. And I grew up in a Roman Catholic family. At the end of Lent, we'd have beef. So those are the only 2 days in 365 days I had a different meal. Clothes. I had one pair of clothes from Monday to Saturday and one for Sunday. Never had a pair of shoes until I was 16 years old. Never slept on a mattress until I was 16 years old. Tell me, how do you dream? My family could not afford $5 to send me to school. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could not. So for me, life was just a blinking away. I went to fetch water from the age of 3, 2 to 3 miles one way, back twice a day. So did I ever have a childhood? Absolutely no, because at the age of 4, you began to provide, be part of providing for your family. And then at age of 4, I began to realize that not only were poor, but my dad was different from any father you could think of. My dad was the most abusive human being on the planet. So for me, I had poverty on one side and a mean dad on the other side. And the worst part for me was growing up, this is what I had from my dad before I went to bed and when I woke up. Peter, you never amount to anything. Peter, you're useless and worthless. Peter, I wish you were never born so I did not have to feed you. As a kid, you don't want to dream to see tomorrow. Or even dreaming was a way of punishing yourself. Like, I don't want to think about tomorrow because it's going to be worse than what it's today. And the worst part was the abuse that came towards me came towards my mom as well. And most of the time, my mom got the worst abuse. Here's why. Every time as kids, when we said we are hungry, she would go to my dad and say, the kids haven't eaten. Would you provide them food? But my mom got beatings for that. So as a kid, you're afraid to say you're hungry because you're trying to protect your mom. How do you dream? How do you hope? And so at the age of 10, I knew my father would kill me, but I was like, but why give him the opportunity to do so? So I had never been 20 miles away from my village, so I went to the bus station and asked the lady, hey, of all these buses, which one goes the farthest? As a 10-year-old, you have kind of no clue of distance. So for me, the best way was, which would take me the farthest? And the lady said that one, and I got on that bus, and I went 500 kilometers away from my village. And I ended up in Kampala. And I had one option, to be a street kid. So I became a street kid at the age of 10. You may ask, what does the street life in Uganda look like? Let me say, there's nothing in the United States I can compare what a street life as a Ugandan boy looks like. Where did I sleep? I slept in the sewer. Why in the sewer? The sewer smelled so bad that that's where we would hide as kids because no other normal people could go. So it was a safe home for me. How about the smell? Well, we would steal diesel and smell the diesel on our mouth or on our nose so we can smell the diesel than the dead stench. But also some people didn't like us, so they won't give us food. So they will throw in the garbage. So being close to the garbage, so when the food is thrown away, you're the first one to go. Not your fellow street kids, but the dogs. So most time I was treated more like a stray animal, to be honest. And that was my life for 5 years as a kid. But as street kids, we learned how to survive. Survive while you're helping. In other words, if someone's going to abuse you, why not get food out of them anyway? So one day I saw a gentleman who was buying food. We knew who can afford food. Wearing glasses, wearing khaki, and you have shoes, you can afford food. So today, if you're wearing khakis, you have glasses, watch out for your wallet. It might not make it. So I saw a man, I was like, there's mine, I'm going after this one. And I followed him, and as soon as he bought his food, he bought bananas, and so I lifted the thing, and I wanted to take it and say, hey, put my food down. And he followed by asking me the one thing that nobody had ever asked me before. He said, hey, what is your name? And that rattled me, because no one had ever asked me my name. But also here's why. As street kids, everyone who was kind was abusive at the same time. So for me to say, what's your name? It meant danger, 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 danger. Kindness followed the abuse in some way. So for me, I wanted to run away. But before I could run away, he gave me something to eat. And so he left. Next week, he comes back. Next week, he comes back. The fourth week, I kind of know, wait a minute. He comes during this time. He buys this. He parks his car here. So one day in a week, someone knew my name. But also, I didn't have to steal because he always gave me something to eat. So it's one day that I had to look forward to where I felt human for a moment. And so he fed me for 1.5 years, and one day he said, hey, Peter, if you had an opportunity to go to school, would you love to go to school? I laughed so hard. Wait, I live in the sewer. I stink. Never seen a shower. Only when it rains, we might stay out, but I've never taken a shower. But also we thought, the people who go to school are those who have mom and dad. They live in a home. I am none of that. So I felt he was mocking me. It's like me coming to you guys and say, hey, they're sending people to the moon. Who would like to go? How many of you go to bed saying, I want to go to the moon? Why? Because it's far-fetched. And for me, that's how it felt. School? For me? Are you sure? My dad said I would never mount anything. My dad said I'm good for nothing. I am good for nothing. I smell, I look like it. And I said no. Next, a few months later, he comes back. He said, hey, if you go to school, there'll be lunch, dinner, and breakfast. Literally, this is what I said. What time do we go? What time do we go? But also, I questioned, literally, this is me. I thought only in heaven can you have 3 meals. Because I had never seen anyone have 3 meals. So did I want to go to school because there was a meal? Definitely. But also, here's what made me want to go to school. For the very, very first time, someone saw me as a human being. And that really struck me, that he saw the best in me because I didn't know there was anything good in me. That's what I was told, and that's what I looked like. And so he took me to school. Not to be a teacher, not to be anything, but also this man, he didn't call me a thief. He didn't call me names that everyone else called me. He always called me by my name, Peter. What would you like to eat today? I never had a choice in anything. Choice in anything at all. For him to ask me, what would you like to eat? When all my life I lived to steal what I could eat. That's what changed my life. It wasn't the school. But for some reason, someone saw me as a human being. So as he was taking me to school, I said, why me? There's 3,000 kids on the streets of Kampala. Why me? Why me? And he said, I just want to be faithful. Today, Charlie, thank you for being faithful on this Memorial Day to honor those who've done everything they could. Thank you for sending missionaries. Thank you for loving on me. And that's why I went to school. After being in school for 3 months, he invited me to go to his home. For the very first time, on a Sunday, I went to home and they had dinner and they were eating. And they said, you can serve. So I got my food and I sat at the exit door. Why? Because I had never seen a good man who can eat with his family. So I thought he's about to beat his family, so I'm going to get my food, and when he starts, I'll be out. So the next Sunday, they did the same, exit door. The next Sunday, the fourth Sunday, they did something really unique that got triggered this yesterday. They had food, but there was an empty seat. And this empty seat had my name on it. Last night I went to have dinner with Charlie and his family. And I asked, where should I sit? And he put me at the end of the table. And right away that just sparked me back to their family. That I was worthy to be on the dining table. Well, all my life I ever thought I'm not good or worthy of being anywhere. These are tears of joy that someone could consider me to be part of the table. And so for me, for the very, very, very first time, I began to dream like, wait a minute, if there's a family I want to be like this family. Because before, I didn't have something to measure what good is. And that's how it changed my life. Remember, I asked him, why me? Because he wanted to be faithful. For young people who are here, I want you to do me a favor today. When you go back home, open that fridge, look what is inside. Look back to mom and dad and say, Mom, thank you that we have food in here. For some of you teenagers who are here, go in that closet, open that closet, count how many shoes you have in there, and say, Mom, I'm grateful that I can have sometimes a shoe that matches every dress that I have. With gratitude, when we get to know how much we've been given, when we get to see it, then we get gratitude to know, man, God, you love me this much? And that's what I told you guys. I am the wealthiest human being on the planet. That I can have 3 meals. Because this man was faithful. My family came to know the Lord as their Lord and Savior. Why? Because for my mom, she said, how can a stranger love my child as theirs? But once my mom knew this man loved the Lord, she went to church. For me, I didn't want to be a believer because I had so much anger towards my father that I wanted to harm him. That was my whole goal. I wanted to go back home, get the baseball bat, break his 2 legs, and say, now I forgive you. But also I struggle with the Bible. The Bible says, forgive even those who've wronged against you. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you sure my father is part of that? But my foster parent, he taught me one story of Joseph. He said, what did Joseph say when his brothers found him? He said, for what you meant for evil, God used it for good to save life. And I'm being honest. I am where I am because I did my best to embrace my past and use it as a foundation to do better for myself and others. If you're here and you're still harboring on that past, it's going to rob you. And I did not want it to rob from my opportunity that I had. Just like Joseph said, remember, he fought everything he could and God used him to save. He had every right to say, woe me, why me? And that's what helped me to forgive my dad. I'm a foster dad, not because yes, I do have extra bedrooms, but because he taught me what a father ought to be. I thought every man beats up his family, every man is mean, verbal in any way, shape, form, because that was the only example that I had of how many treated me on the streets, but also how my own father treated me. But this man was kind. Every time I stole something, he gave me the extra of what I stole. And I say, what's wrong with you? Where I went low, he went high. And it changed my life. So now you see why Luke 12:48. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who's been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. I have been entrusted with much. And we who live in the United States have been entrusted with much. Now you see why I'm keen on being a foster parent. To love my kids. Also to make sure they go back home. That's why I've had so many kids go back home. Because I get to love on their parents. No mom gives birth to a child so they can go in foster care. No. But along the way, they fell through the net. That they don't have the resources that you and I have. And to love them as who they are rather than who I want them to be. And that's been truly a joy. So on behalf of my family, I want to thank you, Charlie, for giving me the opportunity to share my story on how the kindness of one stranger changed it all for me. Every time I go back home, it's like, Peter, I wish I did more. I'm like, I don't know what more you could do. You know? That I was nobody, he made me known. That I had no hope, he gave me hope. I didn't have a family, he gave me a family. I didn't know what fathers look like, he showed me what a father looks like. Why? Because he saw the best in me when I didn't even see it, didn't even know that I had. And he changed my life. And I'm grateful for that for sure. So thank you.